President has been consistent. There was no surprise in his approach on this.
The clear message from President Trump is having an impact.
They agreed to pay more, and they agreed to pay it more quickly.
So, Donald Trump seems to think he won the deal in Brussels, and Justin Trudeau and the NATO Secretary General sure made it sound like he might have. Yet Canada's defense spending plans did not change one iota this week. The 70% boost Trudeau mentioned in Belgium was announced last year, and there were vain attempts to pin down the Prime Minister on whether Canada will meet NATO's 2% spending guideline. We're currently falling well short of it, by the way. He would only say that Canada will work towards, quote, again, towards that goal. But even that 70% increase won't get us nearly there by NATO's 2024 target. So Trump, however, says Canada will hit the 2%, and in his words, within a short period of time. Was everyone just telling Donald Trump what he wanted to hear and could have actually worked? Well, it's time once again for the Sunday Scrum. John is in Ottawa. Vicky's here in Toronto. John, let's begin with you. From a Canadian perspective, did this week's meeting actually accomplish anything?
Well, yeah, NATO survived. So we are into this surreal world now where the President of the United States, the most powerful political figure in the world, lives in a fantasy land, a world of his own imagining and construction. He also doesn't like the West very much, its institutions and its alliances. So after the G7, when people came up with a realistic explanation of what went on, Trump went ballistic and called Justin Trudeau all sorts of names. At the NATO alliance meeting, the agreement was, well, let the president decide whatever it is he thinks happened, and we'll nod and say, yes, that's what happened. But you're right, Canada made no commitments at all. Germany, France, Britain, no one made any commitments to increase spending. That is simply a fiction that exists inside the president's head. But since we're trying to keep NATO alive until Mr. Trump goes away, that was the price we had to pay.
Vicky, your take on this?
I think it was, like John said, it was, you let the toddler think that he got away with it, and then hopefully, some of the work what the NATO summit's supposed to do, which is, face-to-face organizing, ensuring and double-checking unity of command across all these nations, that work likely got done, but likely got done behind the Americans' back. And so we're facing a situation where NATO countries are organizing possibly for anything that may happen coming out of Russia without the United States, or at least the leader of the United States. And so I think, it's odd that Trump wants to have it both ways, which is increase the power and defenses of NATO at the same time going to meet Putin this week. So I think it's an odd space for him to be in, yet there's nothing that he's done that hasn't been odd.
Well, the Prime Minister, many are wondering if he just sort of learned from what happened in Quebec and has decided to take this softer approach, just tell Donald Trump what he wants to hear. Is that your take on it, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. And let's not forget, the Senate voted 97-2, I believe, to affirm its support for NATO. So it's not a case of the Americans not being involved in NATO anymore. It's just the president who's not involved in NATO anymore. I suspect not only the Congress, but most of his administration, certainly the Department of Defense, Secretary of State, are actively involved in NATO negotiations and discussions. Everyone is just trying to keep the president happy, and I suspect completely out of the loop.
And reporters seemed pretty unsatisfied with the Prime Minister's response when he was asked, are you going to commit to Canada's 2% target? Let's have a listen to how the Prime Minister responded to that.
We reaffirmed our commitment in the joint statement to the Wales Declaration, to the Wales agreements. And in Wales, all NATO countries agreed to reverse the cuts and move towards 2%. We have recommitted to our Wales engagements. We committed in the declaration yesterday to the Wales agreement.
Okay, Vicky, quick final word to you. What do you make of his response? What happens behind closed doors versus what's told to reporters?
I think all of them are trying in some capacity, and I think we've seen an increase from all these nations of more spending when it comes to NATO, and in some of these other international organizations, almost nobody meets their actual spending targets when it comes to NATO or any other organization. So I think he was saying what was true, which is that he can't commit to meeting it, but he's trying.